Hello everyone, I'm Sean Ryan, your Lawmaster in Exile, and this is the latest installment of Who Is. Most characters I make are designed to run their course in a single campaign. I'm a big fan of the classic Greek tragedy, the flawed hero who sends things askew and must die to restore the natural order. Or of the classic Teen Titans style origin story where the central characters, that's you adventurers, spend their time sheltering under the wing of Batman, only to have Batman die at the hands of the final boss, only to then discover that they themselves are somehow stronger than Batman and it's time to stop hiding. This formula can make for interesting NPCs, but it doesn't give them a decent rate of survival. But every now and then, I make a side gimmick, never supposed to be taken seriously, and somehow the party falls in love with her. That's happened to Miko 3 times now. When it happened in the first 2 campaigns I ran with her, I shrugged it off. The players are relatively new, I was a relatively new DM, we were all going to be attracted to shiny pink things. But when it happened again in Carindale, not in a focused campaign, but with a community of hundreds of players, I had to start taking it seriously. Who the hell was this girl? What was it that made players want to see more of her or threaten to burn the world down if anything bad happened to her? I had to figure that out. I may never have intended Miko Tanner to be the focal point of my lore, but Eleonora was never really my world. It was yours. I'm just building it. But hey, all that was what happened in 2023 and 2024. It's Season 3 now, and some of you have never encountered this flighty little pink-haired halfling that some of our season players seem to obsess over for some reason. And that could be a problem, because in our lore today, whenever we run into the Fae, officers there ask questions about Miko. When we ran into Fae in the Divine Order, both sides of that conflict were after information about Miko. The entire multiverse seems to be trying to answer the question, who the hell is Miko Tanner? And they all seem to expect the little warriors to answer. I'm not going to tell you why everyone wants to know who she is. We DMs know the answer to that question. You'll have to wait to find out. But as Miko was involved in many of the pivotal moments of Season 2, War of the Seeds, telling her story is a great way to sum up last year's action. So, as no player can be everywhere, this video will hopefully help even experienced players fill in some gaps of their experience in Season 2, while at the same time helping our newer players answer the ultimate question of the first half of Season 3. Who is Miko Tanner? I never liked the Sim series, but my sister-in-law seems to enjoy it, so in an effort to see her perspective, I sunk a good 100 hours into The Sims 3 back in the day. One character that stuck with me was Miko Ojo. She's a starting character in the Karaoke Legends, a group of young adults you can play as from the City Slickers DLC pack, and she's the only one of them who starts an impressive 8 out of 10 for her singing skill. Romantically, she's also a heartbreaker, with an ingrained tendency to be non-committal and an ambition set that includes starting romances with people already spoken for. There's no reason for a prude like me to like this character, but somehow I do. She has blazing pink hair, and she rocks this slightly alternative chic style. In a game full of pretentious twats who all want to be stars and have it all, she's the one who already has everything she cares about and now just spends her time rolling through everyone else's story like a wrecking ball. And if anyone's heart gets broken by that, she's just like, yeah, deal with it, nerd. Or I assume that's what she's saying. Miko Tanner is not Miko Ojo, but it helps to see where her origins lie. I was looking for a potential throwaway character for Whisper to melt for dramatic effect in an earlier campaign, and figured I'd build rapport by having her guide the party through the city as they first arrived in Estegord. She was always intended to be an orphan girl when the party first encountered her, and this led to one of my earlier adventures, the quest to find the resting place of her father, Prius Tanner. I made her a halfling so she could hide under tables easier, which meant she could pop out of nowhere if the party was talking and in somewhere. But she wasn't initially a soul knife. I ended up not melting her. Whisper's evil and much more one-dimensional rival Chorus just killed everyone around her, and she became that rallying point for every other NPC who wasn't particularly strong or skilled, but was just angry at their town burning down all the time. Miko's second iteration started much the same way, but this time the enemy was a lich imprisoning souls. And she got soul-sucked into a phylactery and devoured at the halfway mark. Part of the late campaign involved the party making a deal with a devil masquerading as the god of time. In exchange for recovering the bones of a long-lost saint, the devil offered to draw the souls of an entirely recently devoured town out of the phylactery, weakening the lich just before the party's battle with it. The party decided to make a counter-offer. Screw the town, give us back Miko. The campaign involved a time skip, so Miko's soul had been devoured several decades ago by then and should have been beyond restoration. But seeing the party was so adamant about a return, despite knowing that they were handing me the easiest excuse to make the fight tougher than it should be, and with my poor devil being called out for being, I quote, a frankly rather piss-poor excuse for a god of time, I decided to upgrade my devil to Asmodeus and granted the party's wish. In both iterations, Miko is a flighty young female halfling, about 22 years old, standing barely 3'6" tall, with bright pink hair tied up in a pair of pigtails. She has a high, squeaky voice, and she bubbles, particularly when nervous, which can make role-playing as her in-session a bit challenging. In addition to Miko Ojo, Miko Tanner also draws inspiration from Lily, the Pandaren niece of Shed Stormstout in the World of Warcraft franchise, and if I'm ever struggling to get into the Miko mindset, I replay through the questline Lily's Day Off, where we escort Lily on a tour of the Valley of the Four Winds as she fights giant moths and plays pranks on very intelligent giant rabbits, like painting turnips orange so they look like carrots.
If beer gets you off your butt, then sure, let's go find you some beer.
In Season 1, I was still treating Carindale largely as a place to playtest adventures before using them on my own private campaigns. So when Miko did appear, it was usually just because she was appearing in that adventure on my other campaign anyway. She made her debut in roleplay as the quest giver for the hunt for Prius's grave, which I ran twice at Carindale, but she first appeared on the table in the hunt for Anthem, another of Whisper's friends who aren't really, where she demonstrated a strange and almost innocent glee at the thought of slitting Anthem's throat. I made her a soul knife, mostly to demonstrate their cool level 11 keystone ability to teleport around the map, as the ritual circle, surrounded by watchtowers, otherwise provided some challenging terrain for a melee class. From there, she largely retired, appearing only alongside her uncle, Charles Penrose, during the final hunt for and showdown with Whisper. I didn't even include her alongside Briac in those final adventures, as I wanted to leave open the possibility that she got nuked into non-existence alongside her uncle. This has all been retconned slightly as it became clear I could use her as a more serious character and interesting counterpoint to Briac Sunfist in Season 2. Miko is the child of Prius Tanner and Nels Penrose, both seasoned adventurers and little warriors who were brought into the guild by Briac. Miko was born on Briac's homeworld of Kozanost, where she was likely brought up on the farm by her mother for much of her early life. She has one younger brother, William Billy Tanner, who was born only 5 years before Guildfall, but she would have spent a large amount of time at the Guildhall itself, visiting her father and uncle. Sometime before Guildfall, Niles Penrose would disappear on her voyage west to the Cloud Queen, and Miko and Billy would be moved into the Hall on a permanent basis. Then when Prius Tanner died barely a year before Guildfall, Miko would be left to assist the new Spy Master, her Uncle Charles. She would learn to control her strange psychic abilities under the tutelage of Lady Wintergreen and Damien Ironbrand, like many children of other adventurers. She would spend much of her free time in the tavern, playing practical jokes on the adventurers there, and with practice developed an uncanny accuracy with thrown metal ball bearings, which she frequently threw into other people's ale mugs when they weren't looking. She would also play with the barkeep and with the gold dragoness and once wife of Emperor J. Callan V, known as Tari. But during all this time, the guild had been turning increasingly insular, as Guildmaster Elaine struggled on the cusp of recovering her memories, and the rest of the guild began to abandon their oath and went loot crazy, prioritizing quests that would yield the highest reward rather than where they were actually needed the most. Eleanor in particular suffered from the guild's abandonment. or so it appeared, as in truth Rylane tasked her closest friends, Wintergreen, Noxilla, Gus, and Sir Knight, to personally focus on Eleanor's well-being, while Noxilla's daughter Reason established a counter-guild in Jets as a long-term solution. But Miko was not to know any of this. Wintergreen preferred to work from the shadows rather than take public glory for her actions. So Miko frequently snuck out of the guild and travelled broadly across Pizzol, the Earl Empire, Starfall Lake, and even the frontier to the far west. It's here that she most likely first ran into the wandering Minotaur, who had become her closest friend, Milmar, and the young mute elven refugee from Tokmor, Sarah Goldmist. Through all this, Miko never spoke much of her cousin, Jaspier Penrose. He was something of a golden child, a favoured student of the guild leadership. Honestly, Miko was probably a bit in awe of him. He very much led the cool kids club. And so we come to the events of Guildfall. In the immediate lead-up, Whisper would destroy her uncle, Charles Penrose, leaving not even a memory behind. Her godfather, Briac, would lead a team to avenge him, and would succeed, but his physical dwarven form would be destroyed in the attempt, causing him to be reincarnated as he would have. Miko was distraught and fled the guilds that had brought her and her family nothing but pain. She was in nearby Galley Town, then all but an abandoned ghost town when Nathrel struck a week later. Miko raced back to find no sign of Billy. She participated in the counterattack led by Gus and Wintergreen. In the aftermath, Nathrel was killed, but Rylane was gone, the World Tree was destroyed, and only a single seed remained for Lady Wintergreen to regrow the guild. And it's hard to overstate just how devastating this was for everyone involved, including Miko. She was already struggling with the death of her parents, then her uncle, then the near loss of her godfather. Most of her classmates and contemporaries were then killed by Nathrel or his lieutenants. And what made this worse was that most of the lieutenants were variants of Baelor, so they blew up when they died, meaning even when adventurers were victorious, those who vanquished them typically blew up with their quarry. And as Miko herself grew frustrated at the new guild's tendency to remake the same mistakes, she struggled inwardly with a heavy sense of survivor's guilt just as much as Wintergreen did. After all, Nathrel had struck at their home, and she wasn't there to defend it until it was too late to do more than protect a single seed. Miko would be 21 when Guildfall occurred, although she commonly protested, "No, I'm 26, really." And if this event was the low point of the Little Warriors, it was rock bottom for Miko Tanner. She couldn't even seek revenge. Whisper and Nathrel were dead. She was tempted to take out her frustrations on the guild itself. After all, she and her family had been living peacefully on a farm before Briac dragged them out to Eleanora to serve the Little Warriors. But she couldn't really do that without also fighting Briac Sunfist, and flawed as he was, the reincarnated High Cleric of the guild was the only thing resembling family she had left. The early weeks of the war would be shocking for Miko. She was pleasantly surprised when the guild's first quests into Eleanora prioritized rebuilding local relationships and restoring trust rather than plundering it for much-needed resources. But then those who sought to oppose the guild kept showing up looking like Whisper. Briac assured her the man was dead, but she was terrified he could be wrong, so she did what she felt she did best. She went rogue, fled the guild, abducted guild agents and allies until she could question them and assure herself they weren't imposters or charmed dupes. Eventually, she and Briac succeeded in drawing out a high-ranking member of what she would later learn was the Rotwood Conclave, only to find her quarry was a blight-corrupted Frederica, a much-loved adventurer thought lost in Guildfall. This would be one of the first times the guild ran into their corrupted former comrades from Season 1. Sadly for Miko, it would be far from the last. Miko's attempts would then turn to the creation of the Mindshield Helm in assistance to Lady Layla III. With the help of Sarah Goldmist, she would spawn and harvest imparts in bulk, using her own blood to summon the devils and the tomfoolery in, with Sarah shooting them out of the air and then carving their hearts out. She would also quest with the team that liberated the diamond mines at Ember Halls from the Fire Giants, using the remains of the Baelor and Abyrus who had attacked the Guild Hall to fashion Baelor bombs, which she used to kill the fire giant King Zultir and his entourage and rescue Kayla Pistoptilus of Pizzol Springs. It was about here that she also became a Magi. one of the few permitted to enter all floors of the Tower of the Magi, used to sculpt spells, create golden acorns, and engage in arcane experimentation with the spellcrafting cube. This revelation puzzled Miko to no end, as she was not and never had been a spellcaster. As Deathface would put it later, "I've seen you try to cast an arcane spell once, it was hilarious." Briac Sunfist began frantically tracking down anyone who might have known how to create shield tokens, as it appeared no one who knew the secret to their crafting had survived Guildfall. Briac and Miko would eventually track down Jaspier Penrose in a frozen wrecked laboratory, only for Jaspier to betray the party, killing the little warrior Cervellus, apparently killing Sarah Goldmist, and nearly destroying Miko. She was only saved by a blood magic ritual cast by Briac, but she was frozen in time. It was likely desperation to bring Miko back as much as craft new shield tokens that led Briac to finally gamble on resurrecting Whisper, a gamble that paid off, as the Whisper who returned seemed free of demonic influence and would not only cure Miko, but go on to become a powerful ally of the guild through the rest of the war. Returned to the guild, Miko would spend most of her time mourning Sarah's loss and trying to take her mind off it by playing pranks on any poor adventurer within range. The ranger, Athalas, who would go on to become one of the Blightburners, who confronted a corrupted Noxilla at the Conclave's Hall, got himself stuck to a post with sovereign glue. For all we know, his belt is still there, stuck to the post in the courtyard. Ball bearings in beer mugs remained a favourite of hers. Poor June Woodshimmer got a ball bearing to the side of the head for no apparent reason other than being the next person to walk into the Tomfoolery Inn after Miko was dared to land a trick shot on whoever next entered. And of course, shoelaces being tied together during quest briefings somehow never got old with her. It is here we come to an event with far-reaching implications. Miko, Milmar, Midney, Medea, Edith, and Taylor. Did I get them all? I'm always terrified I miss someone when I recite that list. They would all enter the Shrine of the Forgotten. In an attempt to learn more to free the souls trapped in there, Milmar would speak with the Sleeping King and disturb his rest, despite Miko's pleading. Milmar would be dragged away from the shrine, but the damage was done, and the veil between the nightmare and reality shattered. In desperation, Miko used the shrine to reach out to Orcsum, the Smiling Devil, and signed 2 contracts. The first sold her soul in exchange for Orcsum's aid in protecting a number of cities across Eleonora. The second granted Orcsum an undefined favour, payable while she still walks Eleonora, in exchange for Orcsum delaying the onslaught of the aberrations of the nightmare for a week so people could flee to the safety of these cities. All this caused a major rift in Miko and Milmar's friendship, and in grief and rage at what Miko had been drawn to do, Briac Sunfist exiled Milmar from the Guildhall. Milmar would succeed in voiding the first contract with the aid of Whisper by forcing Orcsum to fail at protecting the city of Tokmor, but the second contract remained enforceable. This was what we DMs called Aberration Week, or the Cowpocalypse, for Milmar's unwitting role in bringing about such wide-scale death and destruction. The veil would repair itself, and the increased devastation caused in Tokmor would ultimately play into the Little Warrior's favour. It caused a net saving of lives by frightening common folk away from that city. Some weeks later, you see, Clara Talonsby would betray everyone left behind in Tokmor to the Blight, prompting Whisper to bury the entire city in a tidal wave. Miko had a minor role to play in that tale as well, as she was present on Dragonback during that final battle against the Tokmor High Council. Milmar would eventually reconcile with Miko, but that's a tale for another time. In the meantime, Miko would participate in the doomed attempts to hold the Temple of the Silent Queen against the assault of Emperor J. Callan V's undead hordes. As J. Callan approached the temple, Miko would sneak behind him and slice half of one of his ears off. This would not only cause J. Callan to retreat, but would play a direct role in his eventual defeat at the Battle of Eel City, as the ear would be mounted in the Mind Shield helm to grant Empress O'Malley the fortitude to maintain a ritual that weakened the Lich Lord. Before J. Callan made his final approach at the end of the siege, Miko would bring a party of little warriors to destroy a siege tower, prompting the new Guildmaster Wintergrain to leave defense of the new Sapling World Tree to ensure Miko's safety. And that gave an opening for Jaspier Penrose to attack the tree, an attempt that was only foiled at the last by intervention from Damien Ironbrand. This was an important lesson for Miko of the perils of leading from the front. It sounds heroic, but if you do it, every friend you have feels the need to watch your back, where instead you could lead from the back and you're watching everyone else's. Miko would forever after be much more respectful of the guild's tendencies to sacrifice everything to rescue her if she got into trouble. In the closing weeks of the war, Miko would organise scouting parties from gents into the far north, scouting first the Palace Eternal, where the barbarian King Crost held court, then the Conclave Hall itself. She was present during the Battle of Dawn, where first Briac Sunfist, then Jaspier Penrose were both killed. During the Battle of 12 Acorns, Miko, Milmar, and a collection of allies would all fight to protect Wintergreen, while she cast a spell to empower a strike team sent to kill Wintergreen's corrupted sister, Noxala. After the war, Miko would retire to the farm on Cosmost, reunited with her father, who had been resurrected by Whisper and had become the guild's new spymaster, and with Billy, who had turned up in the care of Whisper's daughter, Vela. Joining her was her friend, Milmar. Miko herself would never again step foot on Eleonora, as a means to avoid the terms of her second contract with Auxum, which allowed a favour to be called in while she still walked on Eleonora. In truth, Auxum now effectively owns the ability of Miko to return to the guild, which may have been what he had in mind all along. While on the farm, Miko would occasionally be visited by Whisper, who would continue her training in the odd psychic abilities she had inherited from her mother, who was still lost and presumed dead. Miko spent 15 years at the farm before she was visited by Daphne Skiphoof, her new satyr friend, and events began to swirl around her once again. The thought of this genuinely terrifies her. During the war, for Miko, the guild had frequently risked life and soul, not just of themselves, but of their world. And now Miko can no longer take shelter in the hall. Events are forcing her to lead from the front once more, and she knows from painful experience what that can lead to. But her oath compels her to protect the innocent without fear or favour regardless. That almost brings us to present day. The now veteran and mature 36-year-old Miko will be left investigating the potential of soil and its effects, the strange actions of the Cloud Queen, and why all the stars on the far western edge of the world of Cosmost have turned dark. Her journey in Season 3 has already taken her across much of the world of Cosmost, but it is still just beginning. I hope you've enjoyed this crash course on perhaps the Guild's most unintentionally central character. If there's other lore topics you would like explored, don't hesitate to let me know. It does take much work to put these videos together, but I do find myself enjoying it. Otherwise, I hope you're all enjoying yourselves in Carindale, and I hope to see you up there soon.